Alright, it is time to start another video, and another JoJo one at that. So today we're going to talk about what would happen if Weather Report slash Dominic Pucci slash Wes Bloomery slash Wes Aquamarine slash a bunch of other names. What if he was never stolen as a baby? Because that was what set up the chain effects of Stone Ocean as a whole, and played a big role in a lot of Stone Ocean's changes. So I'm going to talk about a timeline where Poochie, let's say that Wes Bloomery didn't die in this timeline. Either that or maybe something else didn't happen. I don't know. And we'll talk about what this universe would have looked like with Weather Report being with the Poochie family. So in this timeline, we are going to go back to Weather Report and Enrico Pucci's birth. Now in this timeline, something changes. As to what changes, maybe Wes Bloomery, the real Wes Bloomery, not Weather Report. He does not die at birth, meaning that Weather Report isn't stolen from his family. That's one way you can go. Maybe Wes Bloomery still dies, but she doesn't steal Weather Report. Maybe something else happens. Maybe the babies are taken away before she could take one, or she takes a different baby instead. I don't know. Something changes. Weather Report is with the Poochies. Now, what's going to change in this alternative timeline? Now, in this timeline, Weather Report will more likely be raised with his brother, Ipuchi, his sister, and his mom and dad. So, in this timeline, Weather Report would have probably been a lot happier and would have actually got to live a decent childhood. Pucci was a it was confirmed that Pucci grew up with a rich family, same with his sister Perla. So it seems very likely that Weather Report would have actually got to grow up a really good childhood. Since we don't know what his fake mom's life was like, we don't know if it was middle class, we don't know if she was poor, we don't know if she was rich. We don't really know what Weather Report's financial life was like. So, I mean, I don't really remember. They may have confirmed it back in the manga or anime. I never watched Batch 3, and I haven't read the manga in ages, so my memory's a little fuzzy when it comes to Weather Report's childhood. So if you have any good memory on Weather Report's childhood, you can tell me in the comments. But Weather Report's basically, he gets to grow up with a rich family, which is a good thing for him. And another change is that Perla would never hit on Weather Reports because, you know, you. And she doesn't know that she knows that Weather Report is your brother. She doesn't know it's Wes Bloomery. She could still meet Wes Bloomery, technically speaking. Since Wes doesn't die at childbirth, this does mean that she could eventually fall in love with him, if you want to go that route. However, if you don't go that route, then she would actually probably just live her own life. And whether or not she does marry Wes, it's not going to matter, because Pucci will likely not sit a hit on him. Not only that, but it's also possible that Pucci may never meet Dio. But however, I really can't guarantee that, and not only that, but you also have Weather Report to factor in. But however, it is more or less guaranteed that Perla Pucci is not going to be dying in this timeline. Since Weather Report does not get killed by the clan, or in this timeline Wes Bloomery, because he is not Weather Report, that basically means that he will actually still be alive, because Pucci is probably not going to hire a hitman on a regular teenager who he has no association with, thus meaning he keeps his sister alive because she won't take her own life. So this would mean that she would still be alive, keeping all three Pucci siblings alive in this timeline. And then this would also mean they would still get to interact with Dio, debatably. Now, would Pucci still meet Dio? I have a few scenarios when it comes to mind. If Pucci still meets Dio, would Weather Report be with him that day? If it's a no, then Pucci would probably still fall for Weather Report's charisma. Not Weather Report, but Dio's charisma. My ADHD just makes me screw up on names. Pucci would fall for Dio's charisma, like in canon, and would probably, whether or not he does carry out the Heaven Plan, I can't say for certain. Whether or not he still gets a stand is hard to say for certain. Since his sister doesn't die, he doesn't go through that big tragedy. So it is hard to say whether or not he could have controlled a stand. I assume he could have, and if he did, it'd probably have just not been as basically Whitesnake-like. Like, it probably would have had some kind of thing that Dio would need for the Heaven plan, but it probably wouldn't have been as accurate to what we got in the canon, aka Whitesnake. What about Poochie and Perla getting stands? Well, Weather Report, he would probably still get a stand, because I do believe he would probably have been strong enough to control one, albeit he may not get Weather Report. And Perla is kind of the same, it just depends on if she gets a stand that she can control. It's basically like with Holly at that point when it comes to those three. I don't think that this alternative counterpart to Weather and Poochie could control their canonical stance. Poochie maybe, Weather Report probably not, but then again maybe. I'm just kind of doubtful of that. As for other changes to Stone Ocean, now if you're going with the route where they don't meet Poochie, I mean not Poochie but Dio, well then a lot's gonna change. Because at that point, then there's no one to carry on the Heaven plan, because every one of Dio's minions died. Maybe you can have Okuyasu's dad, but then he gets turned into a booger, so he's not going to matter in the plot. Maybe Okuyasu knows about the Heaven plan, but even then it just seems very outlandish to assume Okuyasu would go as far as Poochie did, and I doubt he would even want to obtain Heaven. So by that point, I really can't say that Dio's plan is basically stuck in limbo. But assuming you want to go the route where Poochie does still meet him, or if Weather actually goes with him, then maybe Dio can mastermind a plan to get Perla killed, which can then cause them to awaken their stance, which is one route you can go with. Or maybe Dio masterminds a plan to get their parents killed, basically having all the Poochie siblings being stand users. If they all have stands, well then guess what? With Perla, it's more or less speculation. I'll really let you decide. I'd assume she'd probably have a healing stand, and then maybe Weather Report can obtain Weather Report like in canon, and Poochie would obtain Whitesnake like in canon. Now, having all three of the Poochie siblings as a trio, yeah, they're probably gonna be too overpowered. Because the interaction, like Jolene's still gonna be framed. John Gallier fight would have 4 characters, but then again, if they did, it would probably just lead to Jotaro probably being in a far more injured state this timeline. I would assume Jolene would probably have just escaped. They probably didn't care about her, and I doubt they would have killed her. And that would have left Jolene to survive the story for now. As for other changes to come out of this timeline, assuming that Jolene stays in the prison in this timeline, she doesn't have much help. Emporio is likely probably adopted. Weather Report probably does work for the prison, same with Perla. If not work, then probably has some kind of association, meaning that Weather Report is probably just going to adopt Emporio as his own. They had a strong enough bond, it seems a varying character that Weather Report would have taken Emporio as his own son. So in other words, you're down 2 Stone Ocean allies. They still meet Hermes, probably. It would be hard, granted, but seeing how Jolene and Hermes met each other earlier, they could get along and debatably actually work together. Foo Fighters is still going to be joining the team, and I would assume that they would still meet Anasui. But however, Anasui would probably have been more unhinged because we don't have Weather Report to calm him down. Either that or Anasui could have just been a villain turned good guy, kind of similar to how Foo Fighters was earlier on in the story. It's also possible that Gwess may join, seeing how the team's a lot more limited when it comes to fighters, so this could probably lead to these 5 characters being the main protagonists of the parts. Emporio is not around in this timeline. His mom is probably still killed though, but Weather Report probably covers that up and makes sure that he never finds out that Poochie actually killed his mom. So by that point, it kind of just leads to those 5 having to go against and them being the new protagonist. As for how this could change the story, I guess Gwess would actually get to be around for a longer part. Lang Wrangler would probably just be a very big F in the chat for Jolene, unless she has the entire group backing her up. But even then, they need someone to create the spacesuits like with Weather Report. And if they don't have someone who can create spacesuits like that, chances are they're gonna die. unless Foo Fighters uses her plankton in a creative enough way, and maybe they can escape. Either that, or maybe because they have a lot stronger stand users, the fight could not escalate to a point where they get trapped into that room, and maybe they can kill Lang Wrangler in short work. Make short work of them. And then Jolene could probably still get shot down, with everything probably going the same, but maybe Weather Report could use his weather controlling abilities to instead use the Blue Frogs to probably kill Jolene. But then again, it's possible that maybe the prison guard would actually shoot Jolene dead, but however, someone like Foo Fighters can just protect her in time. This can lead to the others basically probably killing the guard, and then Weather Report using the frogs to try to kill the cast. Jolene can try to find a way to get everyone out of there, and then the disc can be given to Savage Garden. I don't really see how much of the story would change, seeing how we have 3 new enemies for the group to deal with, the Poochie siblings, and there's only 4 characters, 5 if they're lucky enough to get an extra character like Gwess on the group. The Punishment Ward arc would have Gwess around, which I guess the 4th ally can help. And it's likely that Poochie, aka Weather Report, would probably still actually do the donut instead, which means there'll probably be more casualties by the end of this part. So, in other words, it's likely Anasui's probably gonna die in the forest or swamp arc. Gwess probably might. It's gonna lead to Foo Fighters still dying, obviously. And it's either gonna lead to either Gwess or Anasui maybe dying. I'll assume it's probably Gwess who's gonna die here. And then Anasui could probably live on. I would assume that's probably gonna be the case. He'd probably, or he might die. It's hard to say with him. With that being said, the later arcs, Bohemian Rhapsody would have to be Jolene and Hermes, and I feel like Jolene could probably just play the Weather Report role while Hermes plays the Anasui role of being the comic relief. Anasui could still be there, and then him and Hermes could probably just be comic relief for that arc. And then by that point, that can just lead those 3 to go against Sky High instead. And they may actually spare Sky High, seeing how Anasui is willing to spare Survivor. It's possible that he could just stop Hermes and then just talk her into letting him join, so Raquel could actually become an ally. Because at this point, the team's still very limited, and they're going to need a lot of help for this fight. Heavy weather is also not going to be a possibility as well, because it's likely that Versus may actually get some help. Pearl is probably there to watch Sean as well, and I would assume that Versus would actually just accept his death there. Or either that, or maybe he actually joins, because Jolene is probably just desperate for help to go against 3 enemies. And since there's like 2 casualties in the punishment ward, that's more or less going to lead to a fact that they're going to need a lot of characters to help. And assuming we just get a new group to try to fight off them, like even if we're going with the route that everyone is still alive, you're going to have to deal with Sea Moon, which probably still becomes Made in Heaven, Weather Report, and you're going to probably have to deal with Perlistan, which might be a healing stand, which means that Poochie and Weather Report have a free healer on the group. Yeah, at this point, Poochie's going to win. And plus, there's no Emporio to get the ending, and plus, even if Emporio is around, he doesn't have the Weather Report disc. As for, I guess, how the arc could change, like the final fight, maybe Jolene could end up killing Perlin during the battle. And then that could probably give Poochie, and, like, if I'm going to take my guess, Jolene's probably just going to kill Perla during the ending of the story. Like, Perla probably sacrificed herself as some kind of big sacrifice or something, so Poochie could obtain heaven. I would assume, like, Hermes probably kills her, or maybe Jolene, or maybe Anasui, or maybe Jotaro, or maybe Raquel or Versus, if they're on the group. If you want to be nice and add Foo Fighters or Quest. Like, if you want to be nice and keep them all around. But there's no way they're winning in this timeline because the group is they just don't have the star power. Jotaro's probably the only hope to go against Weather Report, but with Made in Heaven also being there, it's basically just too hard of a fight for Jotaro to go against. And I would assume Weather Report just probably does beat Jotaro if Weather Report is smarter than Jotaro. It overall just depends on who has better battle IQ overall and who would win. Overall, this would probably just lead to Stone Ocean ending the same. No, not really. It's just going to end with Part 6 ending with Poochie winning. So in other words, Weather Report and Poochie and Perla would win, but at the cost, I would see Perla probably dying during the fight as a sacrifice so Pucci could get made in heaven. Weather Report would probably live, but he would probably have some kind of near-death experience against Jotaro. I do think Jolene could have... maybe Jolene could actually kill Weather Report. If you want to be nice and give her that one kill before Pucci kills her, maybe she's able to slit his throat or something, and then that could then just lead Pucci to get a strong enough rage amp. And that could probably lead to a similar final fight ending to how it was in canon, where Jolene... Okay, so like if I'm just doing my own headcanon alternative ending to this, Foo Fighters probably dies Punishment Ward arc. Gwes probably gonna die in the Punishment Ward, or probably gonna die against Pucci in the final fight. Anasui and Hermes are gonna die the same way they did in canon. And same with Jotaro. And Raquel and Versus would probably either die the same way they did in canon, or maybe they turn good, and if they do, then I really don't see them making it far. I would say that probably Hermes will end up killing Perla when Hermes goes to shoot at Pucci. Instead of it being Seamoon to come in at the end, Perla sacrifices herself, or maybe Jotaro just kills her during the whole scene where he's throwing the harpoon. I would assume maybe Perla would sacrifice herself so Hermes or Jotaro don't get to Pucci. Everything can just go the same there, and then Jolene would just slit Weather Report's throat when Stonefree sends out the strings, and then Weather Report would probably either die there, or he would just get a giant scar on his throat, and Pucci is left to fight Jolene. That leads to their similar fight in canon, and since there's nobody there left, Jolene will ultimately die a meaningless death, trying her best to go out a warrior's death, but ultimately to come out in vain, since Pucci's just too fast and strong for Jolene to go against. And, well, at least Emporio gets a happy ending in this timeline, because Weather gets to adopt him. Yeah, this ending is just straight up depressing. So, yeah. I know this was going to be a short video, I said, but... yeah, judging by that, this is over 15 minutes, so... yeah, I was planning to do some short videos, but I guess I just went too passionate and just spoke about something too long. Sorry about that. But thanks for watching the video. This was a very unique scenario to come up with, and a very dark scenario, because if we're going with the route where Weather and Pucci are working together, chances are Stone Ocean's going to be a depressing ending. So in other words, Stone Ocean's ending would either A, be super happy and there's no Stone Ocean characters dying, except for Hermes, because she'd probably get killed by Sports Max, or B, Weather Report and Pucci are working with Dio alongside Perla, who probably could have a healing stand, and then those three are able to carry on Dio's will, albeit with Perla or Weather Report or both dying, maybe even Pucci dying. But even if Pucci does die, then maybe that could then lead to a bit of a happy ending, since Weather can't reset the universe, and I don't think Perla can either. But then again, if they have memorized the diary, then they could probably obtain their own heaven stance. So thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.